Well, hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of the Digging Deeper podcast, where our goal is to dig a little bit deeper into that week's sermon, so that way we might just dig a little bit deeper into our hearts. If you don't know who we are, let's introduce ourselves. I am Chris Brown, and I'm the associate pastor here.
My name's Jacob Belding. I'm the connections minister.
And it's me. I'm back. The guy in the chair.
Judah's back.
Yeah.
And we've learned that Judah didn't even watch the podcast while he was gone.
My bad. At kid camp, they don't let you have your phone, so my bad.
Did you text people?
Yeah,
Aha, okay. So you have your phone.
for like an hour.
Yeah. When you got back, you
Saturday.
should have binged them.
You could have watched the podcast in that hour.
I did have time.
Yeah. Yeah. What's more important, talking to your mom or the podcast? Anyways, because you didn't watch it, we have just been speculating wildly what you've been doing.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so we've just been guessing that you've been sleeping just at home.
True.
Yeah. Probably a good guess. Anyways, we're glad y'all joined us today. We've got a special episode because Michael preached. Michael's our student minister, and it was Senior Sunday. And so Michael got to preach, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. You were there, right?
I was there.
Did you listen to Michael preach?
I did. I watched him cry.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. It's hard.
Service.
It's hard to get up there and not become emotional because you're with this group of students graduating. He's known some of them since they were like little kids, like 5 years old.
Yep.
And so it's like parent moment.
Yeah.
Where he's like, anyways. So proud of you. That's why I don't do them anymore.
Yeah. That was the thing. When I taught high school, every year it was like, okay, it was great to know y'all for this year. See you never, probably.
Yeah, I'll never see you again.
Yeah.
Bye.
You can friend me on Facebook. And then after a while, they're like, what's Facebook?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man.
So that's a tricky thing about student ministry. I remember going to a student conference, for student ministers, and the speaker was talking about as a student ministry, you have to be okay with helping students write a verse of their song, but not actually hearing the whole song. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's kind of sad when you think about it that way, because like you're with them for 6 years, some of them at least, through their course of student ministry. And then some of them will graduate and they'll move off, and you might, get glimpses of their life through Facebook or whatnot. But a lot of them, like, you may never see again. Yeah. And you're just kind of hoping that those 6 years that you had with them were formative and good, and they're going to go out and do great things. But anyways, so, yeah. So Michael preached, and he preached on David and Goliath.
Yep.
And the title of the sermon was Go With God. And the whole premise was Michael wanted to give a challenge to these graduating seniors as they're in a transition time of their life. And so he wanted to look at David, which David had a lot of transition times in his life.
Oh, yeah.
But this is one of them where he goes from humble shepherd to conquering warrior for the Israelites. And so Michael wanted to kind of examine this passage with David and pull out, some principles, like what are some things that David did that we can also do to go forward in life and, conquer giants.
Yeah.
Which we'll talk more about that in a minute. But anyways, yeah. So you have any opening thoughts?
I'd actually never heard this story before.
Oh, yeah? Oh, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. It was. I think it was helpful that it was familiar. Michael did a good job unpacking it, but it's actually a pretty long story. Like the passage,
it really
is. Like
is.
Start to finish is long, and so we're all pretty well acquainted. I mean, we all heard the story of David and Goliath before, so it was kind of nice. You didn't have to sit and read the whole chapter. Right, you can kind of jump around a little bit. And
how come Hollywood hasn't made a movie about David and Goliath?
Oh, they did Noah.
Yeah. It seems like a prime storyline, right?
Maybe like, David as a whole.
Yeah.
Because that would be the climax, is the, David fighting the giant. Mm-hmm. And then, it's like, well, what's next? I don't know. Or maybe they could be a series. actually
You know what
would
I
be
want
bad.
to see? The Chosen. When they get done with this, what I think they should do is go back and make a series called Judges, and it's just like,
Just terrible.
yeah,
Rated R.
yeah, basically, yeah, it's just like this, like conquering, ancient world storylines. I think that would be really interesting.
They wouldn't be able to stream it on their was it VidAngel or
Well, I think they're actually separating from
Pureflix?
VidAngel.
Gotcha. Was
No,
it Pureflix?
Pureflix?
Was it No, it's VidAngel that they worked with, right?
Oh.
I think.
remember.
I don't know. Whoever they worked with, they're separating from.
Yeah.
So I don't know where they would land.
Yeah.
Um,
But no,
Yeah.
I'm saying if that's where they were going to stream it, then
Disney picks them up.
they would have to use the
Yeah.
VidAngel to censor
yeah, right, exactly.
the thing. If you haven't read through Judges, go read through Judges. If you're like, the Bible's not entertaining, or entertaining is not the right word.
Dramatic.
Yeah, if the Bible isn't exciting, go read Judges. It is just nonstop.
It's exciting and depressing all at once.
Yeah. Anyways,
Where
what got
were
us
we at?
there?
David and Goliath.
David and Goliath. Classic story. Underdog comes in. Actually, let's do this. Summarize the story for us, since we're probably not going to have time to read the entire thing.
All right. So let's start back.
Let's start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning.
Adam and Eve.
In the beginning, God created. Yeah. So the Israelites have they've been in Egypt. We've seen the Exodus happen. Right, they've conquered the land. We get through the book of Judges. Lots of like back and forth. They're doing pretty good. Then they're not. There's no king in Israel at the time, and so finally the people get to a point where they cry out to God and they want a king. They want a king. But the problem is, and the books of the law, the Mosaic law, the Torah, actually promises that there's going to be a king. It's going to be, the king is going to be a good thing for the Israelites. The problem is, the Israelites don't want the sort of king that God has in mind. They want one that is like the rest of the nations, and so they basically get King Saul. And he's all right for a while, but he messes up in some big ways, and so God decides that, okay, you've had your fun with your king that you wanted. Now it's time for me to put in the king that I'd have chosen, and he chooses David. So in 1 Samuel 16, God has David anointed as king. He's this little kid, or maybe not a little kid, but he's a kid. And
While Saul is still king,
Saul's still king,
which
right?
causes some tension.
There's going to be friction, right?
Yeah.
But God removes his spirit from Saul, and he puts it on David instead. And so so there's this anointing that takes place, and then the very next chapter we get David and Goliath. So that's sort of the background. It was really fast background, super fast background as to what's going on here.
Well, and one of the problems that was happening with Goliath was their tension with the Philistines.
Yes.
Right, and so they were in a kind of long-standing battle at odds with each other, and instead of doing a full-out war against the two, they decided, let's just put our two best against each other.
Yep.
Which is where they sent forth Goliath.
Yeah.
And now,
Yep. Even if Hollywood hasn't done, King David or David and Goliath, VeggieTales did Dave and the Giant Pickle.
I was about to say that. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, that was awesome. They put Goliath forth as a champion for the Philistines, and then Goliath he's taunting the Israelites, and he's taunting God even. And so, but they're all looking at him, and they're like, yeah, I'm not fighting him. No way. I don't think so. I'm not going to fight that guy. And so here comes David. He's coming to deliver food to his brothers, which we'll get to.
Which I thought that was funny.
Yeah, it was.
Okay, yeah, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was great. And he sees Goliath there, and David's like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine who stands in defiance against God and the armies of God? And so David's like, well, fine. If y'all aren't going to do it, I'll do it. Like at this point, he's the anointed king of Israel.
Yeah, and he was actually, if my memory serves me correctly, kind of getting on to the Philistines. Not the Philistines, the Israelites. It's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, why are y'all scared of this? Like we have God.
Yeah.
And so it was funny that, let's just get into it. Okay. David was a shepherd. Like you said, he was delivering food. And so he was not in the warrior class.
Correct.
Right. And everyone that was in the warrior class was like, I'm not doing this. Right. And so it's like if I ordered DoorDash to bring food to a war, and the DoorDash guy is the one that actually goes to war. Like he shows up and he's like, here's your food. Let me take this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Or even, we can even bring it closer to home. It's like I order, Papa John's pizza, and we really should get some sponsorships for this.
We should, man. We're just getting free advertising.
I know, right?
Every week.
Yeah, it's the, me and my wife are having a fight at the house or something. And so I'm like, well, I'm going to order Papa John's, and I'll get this guy to stand in and fight her for me.
It's like he opens the door, or you open the door, hands you the pizza. He's like, hey, man, while you're here, come help me.
Here's the tip. Can you go argue and win for me, please? Thanks. Don't do that. It's a joke.
Yeah. Of course it's a joke. You and your wife never argue.
Is she sure?
Because she's always right.
She at the end of the day.
Yeah. So you have all of the warriors shaking scared, not willing to go out there. You have the food delivery guy come in and essentially cast judgment on the Israelites that they're scared because they have God with them. And so David steps in, right? And that's kind of where we're at in today's passage. So now let's read.
Yep.
Now that we've caught up, we'll see what David actually says when he gets to that point.
Yeah. So David's here addressing Goliath, the Philistine. So this is 1 Samuel 17, verse 45. Then David said to the Philistine, you come to me with a sword and with a spear and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And I will give the dead bodies of the host of the Philistines this day to the birds of the air and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel, and that all this assembly may know that the Lord saves, not with sword and spear. For the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hand.
Reminds me of Braveheart, where he does the speech.
Yeah.
And goes into it.
Freedom.
Freedom. All right. So that's where we're at. And so Michael, preaching the sermon, again, wanted to pull out principles and relate it to this transitionary time for seniors and, honestly, to all of us. It's good application for all of us. Michael gives out or pulls out three principles, and here's what they are. To be prepared. This is what David did. He to be prepared, to be who God called you to be, and to go with God. All right, let's get in the first one. To be prepared. So David, sometimes David gets a little bit of a bad rap because he was, just delivering the food, and he is just a shepherd boy. But that doesn't mean that he was weak.
Correct.
Right? He actually was well prepared for this moment. So what are some things that it mentions that David has dealt with?
So on the physical side, he's fought lions and tigers and bears, oh my.
Because so a shepherd, right? It's easy to think, okay, shepherds, all they do is just watch the sheep. They're glorified, babysitters for sheep. Not really. So they had to protect the sheep because sheep are defenseless
and stupid.
I can't remember who it was, but they said that sheep are the prime example or the prime argument against Darwinism, right? Because in Darwinism, survival of the fittest, every creature develops some sort of defense mechanism to keep them alive, to keep them going. And if they don't, they die off, right? Sheep are the prime example that that's not true, right? Because sheep have zero defense mechanism. All they do is just stop. and stand still and just get eaten.
Yeah.
That's it, right? And so left on their own, they will get eaten, they will get killed. So they have to have a shepherd watch them, right? And so whenever David was a shepherd, he wasn't just babysitting, but he was literally fighting off other animals and protecting the flock to make sure they didn't die.
Yeah.
Which is why he would fight lions and tigers and bears.
Yeah, that's right. I might have inserted tigers for the Wizard of Oz reference, but yeah, lions and bears is what it says. So, I mean, he's, in a lot of ways, it kind of makes me think of a Gladiator with Russell Crowe when they're like, you know, there's that match where the Emperor's trying to have him killed, and, well, what's the best way to do it? Well, let's find this undefeated champion and have him fight Russell Crowe. And they're fighting. It's not too bad. And all of a sudden, there's like a tiger that jumps on his back, and he's like fighting the tiger at the same time. And it's like that's what my mind runs to. It's like David at this point is essentially a gladiator.
He's Russell Crowe.
Yeah, they should have Russell Crowe play David.
How old is Russell Crowe?
He's really old now.
I don't know if he'd be able to handle that role.
Well, there's CGI now. They can de-age him, and you know.
Yeah.
You gotta Google it.
Yeah, how old is he now?
He's gotta be in his
60.
Yeah, he's right at 60.
Hey, he looks pretty good for 60. Oh, sorry, no, that's Gerard Butler. Oh no, Russell Crowe. No, he's looking old. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, he's put on some pounds and stuff recently.
Yeah,
but whatever. Anyway.
Yeah. So, anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
So he is no stranger to conflict and to battle. Right. Even though the battle isn't like a warrior battle, he's still he's not just a weakling over here.
Fighting a bear is not like a little thing.
No.
Like
if I had to choose between fighting a bear and fighting a person, I think I would go with the person.
Yeah.
Because the bear, like, how do you fight a bear?
Well, I guess it depends. Like, how big a caliber gun do I have?
He didn't have guns.
I know, but for me, if I had to pick.
Yeah, I mean, even if you just had like a 9mm, that would stop a person.
Yep.
That wouldn't stop a bear.
No.
I don't think. I think bear would just keep trucking on through.
Yeah, it'd just make him mad.
Yeah. So I'd be curious. How do you fight a bear? How do you do you have that shepherd's crook and it's like bam?
I guess a slingshot maybe.
Yeah.
With your bare hands.
Oh man.
Or you use the Second Amendment and you use your bare arms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Anyways, so all that say is on the physical side, like you said, he was prepared, right? Correct. But he was also prepared in other ways.
Yes, exactly.
What other ways?
Again, David was the anointed king of Israel. And it's not like, this is something that that was done where, David has gone rogue somehow and has declared himself king and he's just going to go take on Saul. Like, no, God's Spirit is upon him. And in the Old Testament, one of the functions of God's Spirit resting on someone is that God equips them to do a particular job, to be able to accomplish a particular task or mission, things like that. And so David he's anointed here. And so
don't mess with the Lord's anointed, which is the correct
context
use of that.
Yes.
A little inside joke, just in case y'all don't know. A lot of people co-opt that verse, which I think is talking about David. Or no, they may have been talking about Saul.
David refers to Saul about like it's not his job to take Saul out, even though he has opportunities. He's like,
don't touch
far
the
be
Lord's
it for me
anointed.
that exactly touch the Lord.
Which there's a particular context to that, but there were some people in today's cultural Christianity that take that verse and apply it to pastors or leaders. And it's like, don't touch the Lord's anointed. It's like, no, sometimes they need to be touched.
Yeah, that's right.
Sometimes they need to be called out. And you can't, sometimes people use that verse as a get out of jail free card.
Yeah.
Like you can't call out leaders. No, you can't call out leaders.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Because David was the Lord's anointed and he got called out.
He got called out by
Big
Nathan.
time. Yeah, that's right.
Anyway, another story for another day. I got us off track. What were you saying?
So David's anointed, so he's prepared physically. He's also prepared spiritually as well.
Yes. Yep. Which which makes it where as he goes into this battle, he is fully ready to engage in this. It's not like he was just, we made jokes about him being a delivery guy. It's not like he's literally just a delivery guy and then just got plucked out of obscurity and thrown in there and then, nothing happened. He was prepared on all fronts to go into this, which is why he was so confident. It wasn't like he was nervous. He's like, oh, I don't know, but maybe the Lord will help me. He's like, no, he knew exactly what was going to happen and he was ready to go.
Well, he called it.
Yeah, exactly.
He called it in the passage.
Which is interesting that he called that he was going to chop off his head with a sword, yet he didn't go in there with a sword.
That's right.
And so
it's like a Babe Ruth moment where he points at the center field or whichever.
Yeah.
Here comes the home run and then whack, and then he does.
Yes, exactly. So he was prepared for that moment. Now, how does this apply to us? Be prepared. We're going to go into life and we're going to face adversities and challenges and things that come against us and things that come against God. And we need to be prepared. We can't just say, we'll just wing it when we get there. No, we need to be prepared for those moments. One verse that comes to my mind that talks particularly about apologetics, I think it's 1 Peter, that says always be prepared to give an answer for your faith, for the reason why you believe. And so the Bible, sometimes I think people approach Christianity as like, I'm just going to do me, and then God will speak through me in this like supernatural, abstract way, and He'll give me the knowledge whenever the time comes, and He'll give me the words to say whenever the time comes. And the Bible never really says that. And again, quite the opposite. 1 Peter says, no, you need to be ready for those interactions and for those times. That's an apologetic standpoint, but even more so in a sin standpoint. 1 Corinthians 10 comes to my mind of how Paul is laying out, like be prepared, be alert, set up safeguards so that way you don't fall into the same traps and sin that Israel did.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the only time I can think of that there's anything like that in Scripture is at the very end of Jesus' ministry. He's about to be arrested, and he tells the disciples, that they're going to be dragged in front of like courts and rulers and things because of persecution. And at that point, what they need to say will be given to them. But I think at the like if you find yourself in that situation, you've already been doing all of the things that you're supposed to have been doing anyway. It's not like it's just. I mean, that would be a tough situation, right? And so to be able to speak and to know, like, okay, what would I say? Like I don't know what I would say if we were, let's say we were heavily persecuted here, and like your head is on the line, literally. It's like, oh my gosh, what would you say to that? And so there was some comfort provided there, but
and even within that, when Jesus is explaining the ministry of the Spirit, he says that He'll bring to remembrance all that I've taught you.
Right.
And so for sure, I agree with that the Holy Spirit, one of the jobs of the Holy Spirit is to guide you in the moment, but He guides you in the moment through the preparation that's already happened. You got these disciples who have spent 3 years with Jesus, and like so they know what they need to do, and it's just I think of it as like sermon prep. So there are some, I'm sure, that think of sermon prep as okay, I've got my verse, I got my 3 points, I'm gonna let the Spirit speak past that point. It's like, you can do that if you want, and you can take a past approach of, I don't want to speak, I want to allow the Spirit to speak, where my approach is more, I'm going to be very prepared in my knowledge of what's going on in this passage and what I believe the Lord wants me to say, and then in the moment, I'm going to allow the Spirit to bring to remembrance what has been taught to me in preparation to speak in a way to there. And so anyway, so I think sometimes people co-opt verses like that one that you just said and shift it to, I don't have to do anything, I'll just know what to say in the moment.
It's not what that means.
Yeah, it's not what that means. Like you said, the disciples, if they even got to that point, they were already doing what they needed to do.
Correct.
Up to that, which, this whole concept of being prepared brings up one of two realities. You're either prepared or you're not. If you're prepared, great. Keep doing what you need to do. If you're not prepared, what do you need to do?
Get prepared.
Get prepared, right? like lean into the things you need to be doing. Lean into the spiritual side of things, like pray with God, get your relationship right with God, so that way, whenever you go into battles, you're not. I gave this example when I taught on the armor of God, of how when you go in the military, they make you like strip your gun like 15 million times. And the reason they do that isn't just to like see who can put their gun back together fastest, but the reason they do that is to know the full ins and outs of your gun. So that way, when you're in battle and something goes wrong, you're not trying to figure out how does this work. Your brain goes into the preparedness and just autopilot and strips it and puts it back together as quick as possible. And so that's kind of the idea is, in preparation, be so close to God, be so intimate with your relationship with Him and His Word, that when you get into the battle, you're not trying to shuffle around and try to figure out what does God even say about this.
Yeah.
You already know what God says about this, and you're able to go into the battle.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, preparedness is a good thing on that. It's like, it's kind of like we talk about, small groups around here, and building biblical community with other believers. And it's like, everybody goes through ups and downs. Life is not just like smooth sailing all the time.
Maybe yours. I have a perfect
Is it
life.
smooth sailing?
It's smooth sailing. I have kids. Nothing ever goes wrong.
Right. Nothing ever. It's like the time to get plugged into one of those isn't when you're in the depths of a crisis.
Yeah.
It's when things are going. And if you are, then you have by all means come, right?
Yeah, it's better late than never.
Yeah, absolutely.
But better prepared than late.
Yeah, that's right. To have those relationships in place, and for whenever you hit a speed bump in the road, or even to be able to be there for other believers who've hit a speed bump. I mean, it works both ways. But it's easier to do that if we're plugged in before.
Yeah.
We've built that community before.
Yeah, if your marriage is falling apart, you get a awful medical diagnosis, 15 other, significant life scenarios. That's not the time that you want to start and try to figure out, okay, where can I find friends? Where can I find community? That's the last thing that you want to do, or not the last thing you want to do, but that's the last situation you want to be in.
Right.
It's already a hard enough situation. You want to be prepared to handle that situation beforehand. It's like insurance. No one buys insurance hoping that their house burns down.
Right.
Right. But you buy insurance just in case something happens, and so it's like you don't put community around you because you're like, yeah, I'm just itching for a life crisis to happen, but you have community around you because life is life and things happen, and no one gets out of this alive, right? Except maybe Elijah. No, not Elijah. Was it Elijah?
Yeah.
Oh, it was Elijah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Elijah, and then what was his name? Enoch. Was it
Enoch? That's who I was thinking of. Enoch. And so for the rest of us, barring
tough cookies,
that we just have a supernatural moment like them, something's going to happen. And the longer we live, the greater the likelihood that something's going to happen. And so, just being prepared. Taking steps now to do so. Being prepared means doing it beforehand.
Yeah, that's right. Which was nice for the, for the students, and then for us that have been in church for years. Michael pointed out that for students, they over 6 years, they have like over 800 hours of Bible study, sermon, worship time. He's like, you're prepared, you're good. You're ready for this. I mean, that was his point.
Yeah.
You're ready for this transition in your life. But Hopefully,
Yeah.
hopefully they were paying attention.
Well, and another thing is like preparedness.
Yeah.
You can be prepared yet still need to prepare.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's an ongoing thing. I was hearing someone talk. I'm remembering lots of quotes, but I can't remember who says them today. But they were talking about marriage. Oh, it's Jonathan McCluda. Now that I remember, he's talking about marriage and saying that husbands loving their wives and wives respecting their husbands is a moving target. That you can't just set it on cruise control and forget it. That you're going to have to relearn how to love your wife well about every 2 weeks. And wives are going to have to relearn how to respect their husbands well about every 2 weeks, because we're humans and life shifts and circumstances shifts. And so same thing with this is that there's a reason that our military doesn't put them through basic training and then say, all right, we'll call you up when it's time. No, they have ongoing training and ongoing things. And every major regulated career does that, the continuing education.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, and we're all working towards the ultimate transition, which is from this life to our ultimately glorified bodies. And so, I mean, we're in a sense, we're always working to be prepared 100% for that transition.
And to be molded into the image of Christ.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
All right, be prepared. David was prepared, so he could step into that. We need to as well. All right, be who you're called to be. What did Saul, was it Saul?
Yeah.
Or was it David?
Yeah, it was King Saul.
Was it King Saul? What did he try to do when David went out to go fight Goliath?
So he's like, here's my shirt and here's some armor.
Yeah, which is funny. Why?
Well,
I'm kind of fishing a little bit.
There's probably a few reasons. A, he's going to go fight Goliath. Probably wearing armor is not a bad idea.
Yeah,
It's probably not a bad plan. But I think more than that, when David is going to be successful, Saul wants him dressed in his own armor. I think there's some
interesting.
I think there's some like symbolism there, where Saul is like, so we know that David has been anointed by God at this point. He is the anointed king of Israel, right? Obviously, he hasn't taken the throne yet. He's not enthroned, but he's still kind of in this transition area and period of his life that he's going to be in for a while. Mm-hmm. But it's ultimately God that has clothed him with this responsibility, with this position that he's going to be in. And so Saul comes along and says, "Hey, if you're going to fight Goliath, here, wear my armor." It's like he's trying to clothe him in the symbols of who he is, like as king. And basically what that would have done is David goes and defeats Goliath wearing Saul's armor. It's like Saul is the ultimate like sponsor of David, kind of.
It's like, I raised him up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I did that.
Yeah.
And David rejects that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think there is some symbolic nature to it, because you have Saul, who was not necessarily God's pick, but the people's pick, right? And God bringing in David was to rectify that, right? It's like David is my guy. David is who I'm going to place as king and have him lead the nation. And so even in this situation, you have Saul. If Saul is the embodiment of the people's king and David is the embodiment of God's king, which feels weird to say, God's anointed king.
Yeah.
Then it would make sense that David is not going to operate as Saul did.
Correct.
Right? Because it's symbolic. Like if he was to take Saul's armor, then symbolically, like you said, he is taking on the representation of Saul. Mm-hmm. And the whole reason David is there is to go opposite of Saul.
Correct.
Right? And so you have that symbolic nature of God is going to lead them out of this battle, not through Israel's way, but through God's way, not through strength in the world's sense, but weakness in the world's sense, which we get expanded on in the in 1 Corinthians, that God uses the weak to shame the strong, and all of this is a fantastic foreshadow of the cross, and annoyed with Michael because I wanted to preach this sermon. I might still, because it's a different angle of it.
There's a lot here.
But you see that in the cross of Jesus, God did not use what the world considers strong to defeat sin. He used what the world was considered weak, the cross, to defeat sin. And so, similar thing here. But where the principle that Michael pulled out here is that David could have taken on the armor of Saul and tried to be something different than what he was called to be. But that wasn't what David was called to be. Like, he's not called to be Saul. He's called to be David, right?
Thankfully,
yeah. And so what does he do?
He's like, nah.
Yeah, he doesn't take the armor,
Yep.
and rather he leaves on his normal clothes and goes and grabs a couple of stones from the river, which I find funny. Like, again, if you're going to go battle up against a guy, it's like, don't bring a knife to a gunfight.
Yep.
Kind of thing. But, yeah, you have any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, and another sort of applicational point that Michael pulled out of this was, don't do things just because there's pressure, just because the culture says to do those things, because tradition says to do those things, whatever that it happens to be. Be who God has called you to be. Don't try to be. Don't be anybody else, right? Just be and do the things that God has called you to do.
Yeah, and I think that's important. There's an important caveat here, is be who God called you to be. Because what the world will say, they won't. We've moved into a live out your own truth society, and I don't think anyone on the surface, I think below the surface there's some peer pressure, but on the surface the theme is, don't let anyone tell you who to be. You be who you want to be.
Yeah.
Right? You live out your truth. You live out your calling. And what they're really saying is, if I was to bring a spiritual element to it, is you live out what your sin wants you to live out.
Yeah.
Right? If you want to go do this, you go do this. Like, don't let anyone tell you it's taboo. Don't let anyone tell you it's wrong. You live out your truth. And so it's important to not only be who you're called to be, because that's abstract and subjective, and everyone's sinful desire can lead them wherever they want. It's be who God called you to be, which sometimes goes contrary to what you want to do.
Yep,
right?
100%.
Actually, often it goes contrary, right?
And maybe it should.
Yeah, maybe it should, because if I lived out who I wanted to be, I would just sleep all day.
Yeah.
And I would just, when I was younger, I would just play games all day, and I would do whatever, and I would just live for myself. Whatever I wanted to do that day, I would go do. But what God has called me to be is like, no, put to death sin, like put to death laziness, which I do believe is a sin. Put to death, the desires of the flesh. Live your life for not your own self-seeking desires, but rather to invest in others. And that's one of the reasons, not everyone's called to parenthood, and parenthood has tons of difficulties. But one of the things I love about it is that every day I have to put my sinful self to death.
Yep.
Because I have 2 little kids that are depending on me to do that. And when I don't put my own sinful desires to death that day, inevitably they will suffer from it.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
It's the same in our marriages.
Yep.
Right? Families are wonderfully sanctifying.
Absolutely.
You need to put that on a coffee mug or a T-shirt.
And I think, talking to young adults now, Judah, talking to you, not just you. I believe 1 Corinthians 7, where it says that singleness is a gift. I believe it's a gift. I don't think anyone should be discontent with the season that they're in and try to move God's timing ahead of where his timing is. But I think there's some that they're not embracing the gift of singleness as a gift, but as an out. It's like I'm choosing not to get married and have kids, not because I want to dedicate my life to God's kingdom and ministry, but because I don't want to answer to anyone else.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. That's not the gift of singleness right there. That's you choosing selfishness.
Yeah. 100%.
Nothing to do with here. Come to the young adult service. We may talk about that at some point.
Right.
Starting up. When, Judah? When is the young adult service starting?
June 8th?
Close. 4th.
June 4th.
June 8th would be a
June 8th?
Saturday.
Saturday, yeah, my bad.
Yeah, I'm not going to be up here on a Saturday. Tuesdays, 7 p.m. If you're a young adult, come to it.
Yeah, it'd be funny. It's like, we teach on that, preach on that at the young adults, and all of a sudden, all the young adults are like coupled up.
Start coupling up. Then next we do dating series.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, all right. We got to get moving.
Yeah.
All right. So be prepared. Be who God has called you to be. And lastly, go with God. This is an interesting point that Michael pointed out, that when David is giving his Braveheart speech to the Philistines, that he keeps pulling it back to God. The Lord is going to deliver me, not me, the Lord. Any thoughts?
Yeah, the Lord of hosts, the Lord of armies. And I thought, he also made a really good point in this, is that, when we try to overcome just on our own strength, whether it's sin or temptation in our lives, or we're like, I got this particular transition time in my life, or I got this challenge, I got it. Don't need God's help on that. And then a lot of the times we fall flat on our face in those
1
sorts of...
Corinthians 10:13, I believe. If anyone thinks they stand, take heed lest they fall.
Yep, pretty much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. And so, first off, we're more prone to fall or to fail. But second off, whenever we do rely on God, when we go with God, not that, and when we don't go off our own way, but we're keeping in step with the Spirit, then those victories in our lives, or those times that we overcome, ultimately it glorifies God. It brings Him glory and honor, because we recognize and are able to see that, like, no, it wasn't just me that was able to accomplish X, Y, or Z, which happens to rhyme. I like that. No, it was God. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have gotten through this time or done this thing without walking with God, without Him being there and really, making it happen in a lot of ways. And
that's where it's really important to, and Michael got into this, to read, to place yourself in this passage correctly. Mm-hmm. Famous Matt Chandler, I mean, you've been referencing it all week. Famous Matt Chandler sermon on this, where he says, "You're not David." It's so easy to like read this battle between David and Goliath, and we read ourselves as the hero, like we're David fighting our Goliaths, and Matt Chandler famously said, "You're not David. You're not going out there battling Goliath, taking down your enemies. You know who you are? You're the scared Israelites sitting on the sidelines, shaking, not knowing what to do. You know who is David? Jesus. Jesus is David. God is David. This is a fantastic foreshadow of Jesus is going to conquer death and conquer sin. And the only hope that we have of conquering death and sin is not through us summing up the courage to become David. It's us leaning on leaning on Jesus, who fulfills the role of David in that.
100%.
So, yep.
So yes, go with God, lest ye fall flat on your face.
Exactly. And I don't think Michael mentioned this, but he does kill David.
David kills Goliath?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah, David. Twist ending.
Yeah, right. The fan fiction version.
What version of the Bible are you reading, Chris?
Oops. Yeah, I don't think Michael mentioned this, but David ends up killing Goliath and conquering him, cutting off his head with his own sword.
Yep.
Which is lots of funny things. I found that funny, and I haven't had a chance to make fun of Michael for it yet. But Michael goes through this whole passage and then doesn't actually get to Goliath gets slain.
Yeah. So what happens? Well, Michael figures that all of us, had faith like David, and so we know that God has it. It wasn't David ultimately; it was God through him.
Yeah. Anyways, so that's the sermon from Sunday. Michael's challenge to the seniors and to the rest of us to learn from this account of David and Goliath, to be prepared for the battle, to be who God has called you to be, and to ultimately go with God and realize that it's God that's going to bring the victory, not you. All right. Any final thoughts on the sermon? Cool. All right. Let's now move into the bad doctrine of the week.
It's the bad doctrine of the week.
All right, Jacob, you are presenting the bad doctrine of the week this week. Any preface you want to give to it?
Nah.
No, we're just going to go in blind.
Yeah, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And then we'll get into it.
Cool. All right. Well, let's see it.
When you look at the world, what gives you hope?
Todo.
Everything.
Uno ve
You see
tragedias,
tragedies,
pero ve
but you also see so many beautiful
tantas
things.
cosas lindas. Uno ve madres heroicas,
You see heroic mothers,
hombres heroicos,
heroic men, men who
hombres
have
que
hopes
tienen
and
ilusión,
dreams,
mujeres que miran
women who
adelante.
look to the future.
Eso a mí me da
That
mucha
gives me a lot of
esperanza.
hope.
La gente quiere vivir.
People want to live.
La gente
People
va
forge
adelante.
ahead. And people are
Gente
fundamentally
es
good.
fundamentalmente buena. Todos somos
We are all fundamentally
buenos.
good.
Por ahí somos un poco
Yes, there
pícaros,
are some rogues and
pecadores,
sinners,
pero
but the
el
heart
corazón
itself
es bueno.
is good.
All right, that's good. Or is it?
This reminds me of this is Pope Francis, right?
Yes.
Which he became Pope not too long ago, right?
It's been like 10 years or something, but yeah.
So it may have been him. I can't remember. But there was a big thing either with him or the one before that was basically saying the solution to all, or not all, but the solution to crime, the solution to effectively sin is just money. It's like if people...
Sounds like a communist.
yeah, if people didn't live in poverty, or it's people's poverty and lack that's driving them to
gotcha.
crime. I don't want to speak too much on it because it's been a while since I've learned it, but it sounds very similar because his, where he's coming at is people are fundamentally good. Okay. Do you have any thoughts you wanted to share?
I have lots of thoughts. You don't have other thoughts?
Oh, well, I have lots of thoughts.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
It's funny. I'm not super well versed on Catholicism. I've actually been learning a little bit more about it lately, but I'm by no means like deep in the culture of it. But I've heard some like prominent Catholics. This would be the most prominent of them all. That they say things that make me think, that make me question if they read the Bible. Like I heard one other guy who's a pretty prominent Catholic, and he was talking about, he got asked a question about marriage, and particularly marriage in heaven, and he was talking about how like he was uncertain on what that was going to look like. It's like he was basically saying like, is there going to be marriage in heaven? Maybe, maybe not. And I'm like, the Bible explicitly teaches on this. Like, do you not read your Bible?
Right.
Like, that's not like an obscure passage.
Right.
And so anyways, when he says people are fundamentally good, obviously you're kind of like throwing, it's not just people are fundamentally good, is what he said. But he also said there's some rogue sinners. And so I can't even like be charitable to that statement, because if he only said people are fundamentally good, then we can almost take it the approach kind of like what we talked about last week, that we were created to be good, but sin has distorted that picture of it, and God is pulling us back to good works and what good looks like through Christ. But then he threw in that statement of there's some rogue sinners out there, which makes me think that's not what he's talking about at all, but he's talking about literally people are fundamentally good, and their sin isn't even factoring into that. There's some rogue sinners over here that's factoring into, but the average person, no, they're just good. That would go against Scripture,
Yeah, a little
right? Those are my opening thoughts.
Yeah. So he, at the very beginning, so the question is, what gives you hope? Right? Which is such a vanilla question to ask anyway. And then he gives, it's almost like, I don't know about you, but when I first watched this, I'm like, am I watching like a State of the Union address where it's just like these platitudes that really mean nothing?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a lot of that. And and then hitting with the people are fundamentally good. It's like, no, we're not. Not since the fall.
Right. So if I was to ask you the question, what gives you hope? What would your answer be?
The gospel.
And you would think, so again, this is the Pope. This is like the leader of the Catholic Church, the Roman Catholic Church. So what I would expect from a leader of the Roman Catholic Church or any church is to be the one who's like projecting vision on where God is taking you. And so if like the question, the Pope for the entire Roman Catholic world, like what gives you hope? My hope would be that he would say, Jesus gives me hope, that the gospel gives me hope, that we're in a broken world, but God is redeeming and restoring this world. And while it may seem dark right now, God is going to make all things right. That's where my hope is. That would be what I would expect. But to be met with women getting jobs, man, that gives me hope.
People want to live.
Yeah.
That gives me hope.
Yeah, it's like, that's such like a, like if that's where your hope is, then I don't have a whole lot of hope.
Yeah.
Not that women in the workplace isn't a great thing.
Sure.
Did he say that? Did he say women, or I can't remember exactly what he said.
Like overcoming things, or maybe it was
Yeah.
in the workplace, or
I can't remember.
me
Anyways.
neither. It was not noteworthy at all. You know?
Yeah. And so, yeah. Anyways,
Interesting.
if you're curious in the Bible, where it kind of goes contrary to we're fundamentally good. Again, there's difference between where we were created to be good and sin has distorted that, and we're fundamentally good and sin hasn't touched that. Those are two different things. And so Romans 5, I believe, talks about how Adam sinned, and through the transgression of one man, death and sin has entered the world, and we're all affected by it.
Yep.
Right? And so while we were created to be good, we have a sinful nature now. And there isn't this like, oh, everyone's good, but there's a few rogue sinners. No, we're all sinners, right? We're all cursed, under the curse of sin. And there's only one good, which is what Jesus said, why do you call me good? There's only one good. All right, these people don't read their Bibles.
Right.
And so that's where in the Bible it would kind of go against that a little bit. And so if you come across, people saying, like we're all good, it's like
Just a few bad apples, but
yeah, no, that would go against a biblical perspective on the world and sin and the state of humanity. Now, does that mean that everyone is out there murdering each other? No. It doesn't mean that everyone's as bad as they possibly can be. It doesn't mean that everyone is, psychopathic serial killers.
Yep.
But what it does mean is that we are all flawed and sinful and have a sinful nature. Some of us lean into it heavier than others, but we all have it, and we're all twisted.
yeah, absolutely.
The goodness is twisted.
Yep, and we know that God restrains the evil of mankind.
Yeah.
So even the things that we see, as bad as they are, I mean, God still is restraining in some ways, and people sin, and then it's always a bad thing when God lets that go and gives people over to sin in the ways that they want to sin, right, and lifts that restraint, and then it's then you start to see it's more on full display at that point. But yeah, even the good things in the world that people do, it's by God's grace ultimately.
Yeah. So. Judah, did you have something you wanted to share with us?
When I think of the Roman Catholic Church, I just think of this picture.
Oh, you may have to go to the other one. I see.
It's there.
What does it say?
Detroit priest sprays holy water from a squirt gun to maintain social distancing. This was during 2020.
They couldn't even get like a
drive-by,
like a more like official looking like holy water disperser. It's like literally they went to the Dollar General and grabbed a squirt gun off the shelf.
It's like they could have gotten a prop from like, one of those Hollywood movies where, I don't know, maybe it's the priest has to go fight the demons and has guns with like crucifixes on it or something.
Oh, man.
That's awesome. It looks like the emoji from the iPhone.
The Catholic Church is funny. I don't mean to dog on anyone if anyone's watching this and they're Catholic. Maybe you can shed light on some of these things for us, like help us understand.
Leave a comment,
because there's some things I don't understand. But
like the holy water,
like the holy water in a squirt gun.
What was it? It was is that Keanu Reeves movie? Was it Constantine? Is that what it's called? That DC movie?
I haven't seen it, but I know what you're talking about.
It's been a while, but it seems like, was that the movie where he put holy water in the sprinkler system, the fire suppressant system, so when all the demons come and attack him, he like sets off the fire alarm and then like...
it could be. I know they did that in Supernatural.
Maybe it was Supernatural I'm thinking of.
Yeah. Like they put holy water in the entire like building's water supply.
Yeah.
And so when he like released the steam.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Something like that. It's like,
I want to watch Supernatural again.
It's like, how did they do that?
They
had like a rosary that they dropped in it. It's like, oh, it's holy now. All right.
Yeah, Supernatural is for sure not a biblical take.
No.
But it's an interesting take.
It's entertaining.
It's entertaining. Yeah.
It's also bad doctrine, but it's entertaining.
Yeah. Anyways. All right. Y'all got any final thoughts? Okay.
Nope, it was a fun one.
Yep. We're glad that y'all joined us here today. You let us know in the comments what you think. Can you explain some of these things and bring light? Or maybe you just want to say, hey, welcome Judah back. I don't know. Whatever you want to do, let us know in the comments. And we'll see y'all next week.